Hi, this is Lars with Road Bike Rider, and today I'm going to tell you about the new Stages SB20 Smartbike. Now, first of all, if you're not familiar with what a smart bike is and how it's different than a spin bike, a smart bike is basically, it's an open platform that allows you to use all kinds of different apps, whether it's Swift or Ruby or Sufferfest or Trainer Road or any number of other apps that all work with this bike. In fact, you can even use the Peloton app with it. So you could technically use this bike and ride Peloton. So a spin bike, on the other hand, either just has a dial that makes it harder or easier, or is just designed for spin classes and is not really suitable for using all these cycling apps. So mostly it's cyclists who want to train who end up buying a smart bike. So let me tell you about it. Okay, first let's talk about buying it and getting the bike. So I was on an email list from Stages that announced when it was first available, and I ordered it like within a week of when it was first available through Clever Training, which was one of their recommended retailers. I paid full retail price for it. So when you order it, it comes on a box truck. It doesn't come UPS. It comes in this giant cardboard box, and a guy comes with it, and it's on a pallet. And generally at the box truck, they're not going to take it into your house. And the thing weighs, the shipping weight was something like 100 or 120 pounds. It was extremely heavy because this is an extremely heavy unit. So he got there, he lowered it on a lift gate, and he had some kind of a roller thing, and he helped me roll it up to the end of the driveway, and I was able to drag it in from there. Now, it took me and my wife some working with it to figure out how to lift the parts out of the box to start assembling it. Mostly it's one big piece, and then the handlebars aren't on and all these other pieces you have to attach to it. It took us, I would say, between 45 minutes and an hour to fully assemble it. It was not difficult. It was just a little time consuming. Anybody can do it. They give you all the tools that you need. A bunch of different sized Allen wrenches to make it work. One thing I should point out is there are no pedals included with this bike, so you're going to want to buy whatever kind of pedals that you normally ride with that work with your shoes. I just bought some cheap Shimano 105 pedals. I usually use Dura-Ace on my road bike, and so that's what I ended up doing. So after I assembled the bike and got it all working and got pedals on it, set my seat height and all that, I got out my iPad and I was going to hook it up to the Stages app to make it work, and then try to connect it to Swift and start riding and test it out. But when I followed the steps in the Stages app to activate the thing and turn it on, it recognized, oh, there's a bike. It says Stages SB20, but it wouldn't connect. And I couldn't figure out what was going on here, and I was getting really nervous because I couldn't imagine what it was going to be like if I had to return this thing, if there was something wrong with it, because it came on a box truck and it took me 45 minutes to an hour to assemble, and then I was going to have to disassemble it and put it in the box, and I was really getting nervous. So I called Stages. They had a tech support number, and they answered right away, even though it was like, I think 4 in the afternoon on a Friday. And there was a guy on the phone, and he started doing tech support with me, and he said, well, okay, it recognizes that there is a bike, so that's a good sign that this is a software thing and we're going to be able to figure it out. And indeed they did figure it out, and probably this won't apply to anybody else, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway. It just ended up that what had happened was, when they had put the firmware, this is my understanding of it, when they put the firmware on the bike, they didn't assign the serial number to the firmware, and so it needed that registered serial number too for the app to be able to recognize the bike. And so we went through this weird step of fixing the software by, they did it through the app on my phone, and updated the software, and then bang, it started working and everything worked perfectly, and I was so relieved. So if you do have an issue, the tech support is great and it really worked. So next, let me tell you about using the bike and some of the features and what it's like. So when I was looking for a smart bike, I was actually shopping all the different smart bikes. At the time, there's the Wahoo Kicker bike, the Watt bike, this Stages, and the Garmin TacX. And one of the reasons why I chose this one is because the price was significantly lower than the Wahoo. And also, Stages has been making spin bikes for a long time. And they make like commercial spin bikes that people have for those big spin classes. And so they get used a lot. And I thought, well, okay, this is their first smart bike, but it's definitely not their first spin bike. So I thought, I bet you it's going to last because, you know, they've already built equipment like this. The other thing that I was a little worried about is I had seen other reviews of like the Garmin, and they had talked about leg rub because of the way the bike was designed, and they had talked about that a little bit with the Wahoo also, and even the Watt bike. And I was thinking, well, is this a real issue, or were they just looking for something to criticize? But I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to ride one of these in advance. I'm just going to get the Stages, and so I did. So basically, that's why I ended up choosing the Stages between the smart bike models. So let's talk about some of the features of the Stages bike. Now, it has brakes, and these brake levers work. And so, you know, if you're on Swift or any of the other things and you hit the brakes, it becomes harder to pedal. And so I imagine for apps in the future, that will probably be useful. It's not really useful now. I don't really understand the point of it, but I like it that there's a lot of actual future-proof kind of things that they've added to this bike that mean that when Swift and some of these other apps add features in the future, I'm still going to be glad that I have this bike and I'm still going to be able to use it. Another feature that they have is there's extra buttons here. There's 3 buttons. There's 3 buttons on each side, plus 2 more buttons down here. Now, these 2 buttons up here and down here are for shifting up and shifting down. One is like shifting your front chainring, and the other one's like shifting your rear cassette, and it works similarly. And some people have asked about this. Like the Garmin makes like a cha-chunk kind of feel on their smart bike, so it feels a lot like a real road bike when you make the shift. The Stages is a lot more subtle than that. You can definitely tell that you shifted into a different gear, but they don't try to make it where it feels just like a real bike. It just changes your gear and your difficulty. So it's not a big deal to me. Some people have pointed that out, and I don't really see what the big issue is. Now, what are these extra buttons though? There's an extra button here on top that's right where your hoods are. And what that button does is, I think it works for turning. Swift is going to add some feature where you can turn, I believe, or maybe they already have it and I just haven't used it yet. But this way, on future like Swift racing and other apps where you race, where you have a turning controller, you'll be able to turn left and right. And also, I believe all these buttons are going to be programmable through the app, so you can probably reprogram them later to do whatever you want, which is great. So now let's talk about adjusting the bike. Some people, if you're the only user of a smart bike, then none of this is very important because you're going to set it up once and then you're going to always ride it the same way. But I've been sharing this with my wife, who uses it separately, and so she has a different seat setting and handlebar setting, and we just have all that written down, and there's measurements here, and so when I get back on the bike, it takes me about 3 seconds to unloosen this, or loosen this, not unloosen. I loosen it, I put it on my seat height, I tighten it back down, and then I'm ready to go. It takes 30 seconds. So that has been nice. It's very easy to use. All of it is hand turn. There's a knob for everything. So also crank length, you've got 4 different crank lengths. You've got 165, 172.5, 175, and 170. Now, I put our pedals on at the shortest crank length of 165, which is actually a lot shorter than what I have on my road bike, but I don't mind. I like the spinning. Short length doesn't bother me at all, and that way both my wife and I are able to share it. If you ride the same crank length as somebody else you're sharing with, this is irrelevant anyway. But the point is that there's 4 different crank lengths, so whatever your preference is, it's pretty easy to put your pedals the way that you like them. Let's talk about some of the other features of the bike. One thing that I really like is that it's got 2 different USB plugs back here, and so I can put my phone here, and then I put my iPad here. So if you do a lot of Swift riding or racing, you've probably noticed that you can run the Swift companion app at the same time as that you're using the Swift app, so you can see your wattage better and you can chat with other riders and see what's going on during your ride a little bit better. And so that's pretty cool because you can have them both right there. This thing is adjustable, so you can put your iPad or whatever tablet you use either way. There's also the option to not put this thing on at all. If, for example, you use a laptop or Apple TV or something like that to ride and you don't need this, it comes right off, and then you just have the little spot for your phone. It's nice because I often use music while I'm using Sufferfest or something like that, and that way I can easily change my music while I'm training, and it works great. I never have to worry about my batteries running down because everything's plugged in as well. Now, one thing I also like about this is that instead of having like a traditional water bottle cage like some of these have, it has like a pretty loose tray, so you can use almost any kind of water bottle there, and it's really easy to get to. There's one on each side, and since it's a sort of open tray like that, you can put gels in there. I've got a controller for my fan sometimes, and a controller for the little air conditioning unit that we have out here, and it's nice because you can put 2 bottles, whereas some of them only have a cage for 1 bottle, and I like that. This thing is very heavy, and another thing that I like what they've designed into it is they've put these roller wheels. These are like rollerblade kind of wheels on the front. So if you ever do need to move it, instead of lifting it and breaking your back, you can tilt it up from here onto those rollers and then just sort of move it like a wheelbarrow. So if you ever need to move it around, that's kind of nice. I thought that was a nice design thought, even though I don't see myself moving it around very much. What else do we have? So let's say you keep this thing plugged in. If you wanted to, you can ride this thing with no app at all. So you can just get on it and pedal, and you can shift it to make it harder or easier to pedal. And so you could just get on there and use it just like a standard exercise bike. And I think that's a nice feature. It means that if your app's not working or whatever, at least you can still use it to come out and do intervals or go out and watch TV and ride on it at whatever pace feels like an aerobic pace, and not worry about your wattage and all that. You can do that. Okay, so let's talk about what it feels like. Now, I owned a Wahoo Kicker before this, which is a smart trainer. And the reason why I switched from a smart trainer to a smart bike was because I have through axles on my road bike, and I really found it to be a pain in the butt to take the bike on and off and put the rear wheel back on every time that I wanted to ride on the road. And so I found I was riding my gravel bike all the time rather than take the road bike off the trainer. And so a smart bike enables me to now use either my road bike or my gravel bike whenever I want and not have to worry about taking something apart all the time. And also, my wife did not have a bike that was compatible with the smart trainer because her bike didn't have enough gears in the back. So a smart bike allows us both to use it. And that was sort of the difference between a smart trainer and a smart bike for my purposes. Now, one thing I noticed when I started riding it is that it has a different feel than the Wahoo KICKR as far as when you're using an app like Sufferfest or Swift and you're doing ERG mode where it controls the wattage of the bike. The Wahoo KICKR, it really forces you into your wattage in a narrower range. Like it really jumps you into the wattage that you're supposed to be pedaling pretty quick, whereas this is sort of has an easier, it doesn't feel as strict as far as when it goes from one wattage to the next. So I noticed when it makes you do an interval, like it'll say, okay, now you're going to do 350 watts, and then you start your interval, you can see your wattage goes a little over 350 watts, and then it goes a little bit below, and then it finally settles back in, and it doesn't settle in as precisely, as quickly as it does with the Wahoo KICKR. But overall, I don't feel like my intervals are any harder or easier because of that. It's just a different feel. And one thing I also noticed is the way the freewheel, or whatever you call that thing in the front, works. When you're riding it, I feel a little bit of vibration in my feet that feels a little bit like when you're riding on chip seal pavement. So it's a little vibration-y, I guess. I've not found it too annoying. I've noticed that it exists though. So that's one thing that I haven't heard anybody else talk about with any of the other bikes versus this bike, but it's something that I did notice, that I can feel a little bit of vibration in my feet when I'm pedaling. I've had the Stages SB20 bike about a month now. I've been using it multiple times a week. Used it with Swift and Sufferfest, and I like it. If I had to make the choice all over again between all the different smart bikes or sticking with the smart trainer that I had before, I would do it all over again. And I think I would be, this is the same choice that I would make, and I would still be just as happy with it. One thing that I would be a little bit critical of with this bike is I'm not too happy with the seat that came with it. The saddle, it's not uncomfortable. I haven't had any problems, like, I mean, it's got a center cutout, so it's not going to cause numbness problems or anything like that, but it's really not my favorite seat, and I'm going to swap it out with a saddle that I like better. And you know, that's easy to do, but once again, a new saddle can cost you anywhere from $75 to $300 depending on what kind of saddle you ride. And having a good saddle is important because you don't move around as much on your bike when you're on a smart bike or a smart trainer, because the bike is stationary and you're not standing up and you're not, you know, shifting your weight the same. So it's important to have a saddle that's comfortable. So if you don't like the saddle, swap it out like I'm about to. To sum it all up, I would say that I'm happy with this bike. If you're looking for a smart bike, this is one that you should consider, and I think you'll probably be happy with it too. It has been a good purchase. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on the video and I'll see if I can respond to them. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something about the Stages bike. Please visit our website. It's RoadBikeRider.com. and sign up for our weekly email newsletter. We've got thousands of subscribers, and it's a great newsletter, and I think you'll like it. Thanks for watching.